Welcome to the World Channel, NVV. 50 short funny stories that will crack you up in 60 seconds, part 6. 51. Don't sit on cold ground. So a couple weeks ago, me and my friends were sitting on this cement kind of pedestal, as we called it. It's basically the steps up to the portable classroom that no one uses, and this weird supply French teacher comes up to us and says, "You shouldn't be sitting on this ground, it's too cold and it's bad for your ovaries." I asked her how or why, and she said that if children sit on cold ground their ovaries will freeze and that we won't be able to have kids. Now it's an inside joke between us about not sitting on cold ground. 52. Gay teacher. So about a year ago we had to do a speech about something we were passionate about. These would then be recorded to put on the school website. I decided to do one about gay rights as it was not yet legalized in my state. I decided to mention that I was gay during the speech, which wasn't that much of a surprise to people. In the end it went really well. Then a couple of hours later, during lunch I was walking past the staff room to get to the lunch hall when I heard my speech being played. Being curious I stopped and I heard and replay "I am gay myself actually" a couple of times over. Out of the corner I could see my 6th grade teacher give my computer studies teacher $10. Then suddenly, I sneezed really loudly. The teachers turned around and saw me standing there. My 6th grade teacher has pretty much gotten over it, but my computer studies teacher refuses to make eye contact with me. 53. Foreign student trauma. When I first moved from Lithuania to America I was 5 years old and didn't speak any English. On the first day of kindergarten I was crying so much that my teacher picked me up and let me sit on her lap. Meanwhile the rest of the kids sat on the carpet in front of me and watched me cry while she explained to them what was going on, in a language I didn't understand. Our school was 3 buildings put together, and the pickup was at the blue building but my classroom was at the red building, so they put a sign over my neck that said, "I don't speak English and I'm going to the blue building," and sent me away to follow a crowd of other kids. I'm still traumatized. 54. His face looks like the best chair. So there's this really hot kid in my creative writing class. And everyone knows I like him. But one day, he walked in looking like a freaking GQ model, and I accidentally out loud whispered, "Shit, his face looks like the best chair," and the girl who sits in front of me turned around and said, "WTH, that's freaky and gross," and she moved her seat. She gives me weird looks every time she sees me now. 55. Never wear a dress in Chicago. So when I was younger, my aunt was kind enough to invite me to come along with her to Chicago for my cousin's paintball tournament. I had never been to Chicago before, so naturally I had to go see the big city. Just like any other girl, I wanted to get all dolled up before walking around in front of people. I wore an extremely soft red dress that I was in love with, and some wedges. One thing that Chicago has plenty of is vents, and I ignored them because the ones in my city are never on. This was a mistake, because I just so happened to walk over one that was on. Only to be met with steam hot enough to burn leg hair off, and my dress being blown up to my neck around hundreds of other people. 56. Son of a bitch Adam. I used to babysit this little boy who was a real handful. He was always in trouble and it seemed like every time his dad had to call him it went like this. Dad finds disaster left by Adam. Dad yells out, "Son of a bitch." Adam. One day I have to pick up Adam's older brother at school. A Catholic school. His teacher, a nun, sees adorable little Adam with his chubby cheeks and face like a cherub and asks him his name and he answers flat out, "Son of a bitch Adam." 57. As it turns out, I am gay. When I was around 9 years old I was starting to get confused about my sexuality, so I would always look up, "Are you gay?" quizzes on our family computer because I was scared and confused, and my mom eventually saw the searches in the history and confronted me about it. I lied about it and said I had accidentally clicked an ad. As it turns out, I am gay. 58. Horse joke. Jack strode into John's stable, looking to buy a horse. "Listen here," said John, "I've got just the horse you're looking for. The only thing is, he was trained by an interesting fellow. He doesn't go and stop the usual way. The way to get him to stop is to scream hey hey. The way to get him to go is to scream thank God." Jim nodded his head. "Fine with me. Can I take him for a test run?" Jim was having the time of his life. This horse sure could run, he thought to himself. Jim was speeding down the dirt road when he suddenly saw a cliff up ahead. "Stop!" screamed Jim, but the horse kept on going. No matter how much he tried he could not remember the words to get it to stop. "Yo-yo!" screamed Jim, but the horse just kept on speeding ahead. It was 5 feet from the cliff when Jim suddenly remembered, "Hey hey!" Jim screamed. The horse skidded to a halt just 1 inch from the cliff. Jim could not believe his good fortune. He looked up to the sky, raised his hands in the air, breathed a deep sigh of relief and said with conviction, "Thank God." 59. Lord or no Lord? A religious woman upon waking up each morning would open her front door, stand on the porch and scream, "Praise the Lord." This infuriated her atheist neighbor, who would always make sure to counter back, "There is no Lord." One morning the atheist neighbor overheard his neighbor praying for food. Thinking it would be funny, he went and bought her all sorts of groceries and left them on her porch. The next morning the lady screamed, "Praise the Lord, who gave me this food." The neighbor, laughing so hard he could barely get the words out, screamed, "It wasn't the Lord, it was me." The lady, without missing a beat, screamed, "Praise the Lord for not only giving me food but making the atheist pay for it." Quote. 60. Rest stop joke. I was coming back from visiting my son in Miami and I stopped at a rest stop to use the bathroom. I just sat down on the toilet when I heard a voice coming from the stall next to mine, "Hey, how's it going?" Although I was quite surprised, and I wasn't in the habit of conversing to the people next to me in the stall, I nevertheless answered him, "I'm fine." I said, "Thanks for asking." "What are you doing?" asked the same voice. To be honest, I was a bit taken aback by the brazenness of this fellow, but I would never ignore anyone, so I calmly answered, "I'm relieving myself." Then I heard the same voice again, "I'm going to have to call you back. Some smart aleck is answering all of my questions." 61. Amish joke. An Amish girl and her mother were visiting a mall. They were amazed by almost everything they saw, but especially by two shiny, silver walls that could move apart and back together again. The girl asked, "Mother, what is this?" The mother, never having seen an elevator, responded, "I have never seen anything like this in my life. I don't know what it is." While the girl and her mother watched with amazement, an old man in a wheelchair rolled up to the moving walls and pressed a button. The walls opened and the man rolled between them into a small room. The walls closed and the girl and her mother watched the small numbers above the walls light up sequentially. They continued to watch until the last number was reached, and they watched some more as the numbers began to light in reverse order. The walls opened up again and a hunky young man stepped out. The mother, not taking her eyes off the young man, said quietly to her daughter, "Go get your father." 62. Clean restaurant joke. So these two roaches, Tom and Oscar, are hanging out next to a dumpster enjoying a snack. "Hey Tom," said Oscar to his friend, "you know that restaurant down the block? I went there yesterday to pick up some scraps, and I couldn't believe how clean it was. I could practically see my reflection through the shiny waxed floor." "Oscar," hollered Tom, spitting the food out of his mouth, "please not while I am eating." 63. Heaven joke. A man died and went to the judgment. They told him, "Before you meet with God, I should tell you, we've looked over your life, and to be honest you really didn't do anything particularly good or bad. We're not really sure what to do with you. Can you tell us anything you did that can help us make a decision?" The newly arrived soul thought for a moment and replied, "Yeah, once I was driving along and came upon a person who was being harassed by a group of thugs. So I pulled over, got out a bat, and went up to the leader of the thugs. He was a big, muscular guy with a ring pierced through his lip. Well, I tore the ring out of his lip, and told him he and his gang had better stop bothering this guy or they would have to deal with me." "Wow, that's impressive. When did this happen?" "About 3 minutes ago," came the reply. 64. Memory problems joke. A few old couples used to get together to talk about life and to have a good time. One day one of the men, Harry, started talking about this fantastic restaurant he went to the other night with his wife. "Really?" one of the men said, "What's it called?" After thinking for a few seconds, the Harry said, "What are those good-smelling flowers called again?" "Do you mean a rose?" the first man questioned. "Yes, that's it," he exclaimed. Looking over at his wife he said, "Rose, what's that restaurant we went to the other night?" 65. Can you hear me? An old man went to the doctor complaining that his wife could barely hear. The doctor suggested a test to find out the extent of the problem. Stand far behind her and ask her a question, and then slowly move up and see how far away you are when she first responds. The old man, excited to finally be working on a solution for the problem, runs home and sees his wife preparing supper. "Honey," the man asks, standing around 20 feet away, "what's for supper?" After receiving no response, he tried it again 15 feet away, and again no response. Then again at 10 feet away, and again no response. Finally he was 5 feet away. "Honey, what's for supper?" She replies, for the 4th time, "It's lasagna." Waiting for the next video with 50 short funny stories that will crack you up in 60 seconds, part 7.